Welcome back to the Resolution Room. Whether you're navigating conflict in your relationships, your work, or within yourself, you're in the right place. Let's step into the room. All right, Brittany, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brittany Erway Soto, and in the spirit of switching up my introductions a bit, I'm going to start with what matters most. I am a a daughter, a mother, a wife, and those are critical elements of my identity. And when it comes to what I actually do in this world, I like to tell folks that I am a human potential investor. I have dedicated my life to investing in people and expanding their capacity for themselves and within their organizations. And I'm also the founder of the Balance Point Group, which is a leadership and organizational development firm that offers coaching and consulting to organizations. Um, the Balance Point Group is really focused on helping people and organizations balance the hustle that's required in today's world with the humanity that we know truly powers it. And we do that through working on self awareness and regulation, leadership, and developing human centered systems at the organizational level. And I'm so stoked, Nishay, to be here with you today, talking about conflicts, one of my favorite topics. I think the overlap in our work. So excited to dive in.
That's refreshing to hear because it's not most people's favorite topic.
Can't say I love conflict itself, but do I like talking through how we minimize and shift it? Yes, I do.
Right, right. All right, so let's start with when I first got acquainted with you. I believe a lot of your background was actually in education, right? You were there
Correct.
for quite a long time. So, what kept you there for so long and what kind of led you to this pivot?
Yeah, such a great question. Yeah, I was in public education for 12 years. And I think what really pulled me there was some deeply personal experiences of really struggling in the public ed system. And I think my drive for equity and justice. Our public school system in the US is can be a very antiquated and oppressive system, especially for our young students of color and our families who, are of non-traditional backgrounds. And I came into the work and fell head over heels in love with my students, my communities. And it was the type of job where you could see impact day over day from small conversations with kids who are struggling with work or just with being 10 years old. You left the classroom and the school site every day knowing you had touched a life. And I think that that kept me in it. I'm also a systems human. I love understanding what's working, what's not working, and there was no shortage of system challenges within public education. So I think
Mm,
I stayed because I thought, gosh, I want to figure this out. And what I realized was sometimes when you're in a system that's really complex, getting out of the system and doing some learning from a different point of view can really shift the way you engage. So in 2023, after 7 years as a school principal through the pandemic, which was, heavy and taxing, I decided to go back to graduate school to study organizational development. I'd had some amazing mentors from that field, and I thought, "Man, if I can have the same level of expertise and groundedness, and I can bring that into this education space, things could shift." So I went to Pepperdine for 2 years and got my MSOD, and I launched the Balance Point Group because I really want to bring the learnings that I gathered, especially around individual development, team development, and then complexities of organizational systems back into mission driven contexts like public education, like healthcare, like the nonprofit sector, because I think they are so deeply needed in industries that are so human centered. So that's a little bit of the backstory and why I'm here doing this work now.
yeah, like, can you actually write all that down for me? And I want to use it to describe also what I do because you just said it beautifully. I can never say it so eloquently, but that was a great explanation.
Happy to
And
send you my notes.
please, please, I'm gonna just get this transcript and write that down myself. So if you hear it again in future, yes, I stole it. Sorry.
No copyright.
So I love the fact that you brought up again the sort of systems thinking approach to organizations and institutions. I think that's so important, and I function the same way. So when you hear people describe these issues as a quote unquote people problem,
Mm.
What are you seeing instead? And I guess in your experiences, what point did you start to feel like something wasn't working, like, beneath the surface, and you were like, "This is systemic, not a people
Right.
problem?"
Right. I think it's a blend. I think we have a lot of separation in our professional sphere here in the US where we're like, we just write it off as a people problem. So then we don't really have to engage with it fully. But I think the reality is a balance because it's not just let's write it off as human. And that's just something we can't fix. It's personalities, it's people differences. So I think it's not just that. And then the system is, it's fine by itself. I think we've got a balance. We've got, people design the systems and people engage in the systems. So the design and the humanity within it matter. So to answer your question around like when I noticed that dichotomy, I think I first noticed it during the pandemic when all of our systems just were no longer viable for us. So when we were having to design brand new systems, we in the education space got kind of a clean slate in a lot of senses. So we all these systems that we said, okay, this hasn't worked and that's not the way it needs to be, and there's opportunity to do things different. Suddenly there was actually an opportunity to do some of those things. So we started from ground zero and we were designing it based on what we thought was right. We were kind of combating some of the human dynamics at the same time. And yet, despite all of that work, the systems still were not working for us. And I think it was a moment for me of going, wait, it's more than collaborating and getting input and designing. There's something else at play that prevents our systems from
Mhm.
functioning. And I think a lot of that in my learning in the MSOD world has been that the systems are only as good as the people who work within them. So
Mhm.
that's why I spent so much time with my business trying to figure out what will have the most impact in organizations in terms of my systems level work. And this focus on a framework that starts with the individuals and the teams and then looks at systems, I think is key because if we don't have the self-awareness and presence of mind to acknowledge what is working, acknowledge what ideas keep showing up, acknowledge what systems we have bias towards, we're not going to truly see a shift. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of been my history with looking at systems and the role people play in them.
And you brought this up in the beginning of our conversation. I just kind of heard you touch on it again with the engagement in the systems and sort of like, I guess it could be sort of clouding to be within the system you're trying to fix. And that's part of the reason you felt the need to step out.
Right, right.
So, what are some patterns that you think leaders miss because they're too close to the day to day?
Mm. Uh, I think when we're really caught up in a system and we're entrenched, especially with leaders who have so much pressure to perform, to care for their teams, to be present, especially in the nonprofit space. They're centered around really critical missions that can make or break the lives of the communities and people they serve. I think I see leaders get so caught up in what I call, or there's a theory or there's a school of thought around the different types of listening and engagement we do with one another. And I think leaders are really caught up in the internal dialogue with themselves. And we call that level one listening. So we're listening to what's happening in our brain. And so often the leader is not only doing their job, but having so much work questioning themselves, questioning the choices they're making. For some leaders, it's being like really, really hard on themselves. For sometimes it's maybe being a bit too certain that the direction they've chosen is right. But we get caught up in that level one space as leaders. And what happens is our ability to step out into like the level two listening, which is more listening to others, or the level three, which is more global and thinking more broadly, we get stuck in that place of listening to what's happening for us alone. And I
Mm,
think what happens there is it just becomes a habit of staying very entrenched in the internal, so
mm.
much so that the internal is clouding the rest of the picture, if that makes sense. And I think
Yeah.
it's a tribute to the fact that leadership is lonely and isolating as well. So I see that happen on loop. Leaders, that's it's a pattern that I've noticed in my time as a consultant and coach.
I'm so glad you said that about the isolation because I mean that's a big driver of why I started this podcast and started the community I did, the Resolution Society, because it's hard enough to just have any kind of personal change, like, and really embrace that. So to not have to do it alone, it could just be really helpful.
It's so critical.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so thinking about going from the classroom to your own practice now, what did studying organizational development help you see that you couldn't see before?
Laughing to myself because, I had all these beautiful frameworks pop through my head, and
Mm,
the very perception-oriented side of myself is like, "Let me talk about all of these complex models I studied." But then the
mm,
second the truest answer to Shay that pops into my head was, it helped me see myself, and I think that's the secret sauce. And you'll probably hear me drone on about this during this episode. One of the main philosophies in organizational development is a concept that we call self as instrument, which means that very similar to, a clarinet or a violin, if it is not cleaned, oiled, and finely tuned, it's going to produce sound that is less than desirable. It's not able to tune other instruments in the way that, like, you think about an orchestra and, being able to tune others, you have to be in tune yourself. And I think we drive really heavily on that as the foundation of our learning. And so I was forced to, as a leader, stop looking at all of the frameworks and models that I thought would make me better and look at what I bring when you remove all of that and strip that away.
mm, mm.
And not to say, Pepperdine and the MSOD program will absolutely just crush you with like the amazing level of theory they hit on. So we definitely got that. But that's learning that I feel like I got in a lot of places. But this focus on self was so unique to take away all the pieces that I thought of what made me a good leader and really sit with who I am as a person, what
Mhm,
I bring, what my tendencies are, good, bad, and ugly, and to embrace and accept them so that I can lead with a lot more clarity, to have my instrument cleaned, as it were, so that I could truly be a vehicle for change and empowerment with the people I work with. So I think that was my biggest takeaway,
yeah.
in addition to some really rigorous research, theory, and consulting practice. That was the biggest win in my program.
I love that because Pepperdine is known for their academic rigor. I think we, especially in this area of mediation, like of some of the greatest mediators I've learned from have been from Pepperdine.
Yep.
So shout out to them. But I love that you focus more on something that's more relational because I think that we're in a space now where people are kind of on information overload and are looking more for practitionership. And
Right.
there's a million frameworks out there, but it's
Mm.
who's going to help me apply this every day? Who's going to
Right.
help me do that? And I think that's kind of where we are. So I think the fact that that's what you walked away with is going to do serve you very well in this field.
Yes. And I'm seeing that I think this is where, we've kind of we just have these like ebbs and waves in society of, we have this big increase of information, like when we had the internet change our dynamics, and we have just a workforce of incredibly talented, smart individuals. And now with AI and all the changes that we've experienced, the complexity has quadrupled.
Mm.
And we have moved, or well, I can't generalize for everyone, but I think our tendency as people is to learn on this very heavy cognitive side how to do the work and how to understand it. And like you said, the practitionership of understanding yourself and how you clearly convey what you want to get across, who you are in the space, how you share the knowledge that you hold. I think it's the skill that it makes or breaks our careers. And yet we don't have any formal training around let's get inside your brain and figure out what's going on in there.
Mhm.
That is the origin of the balance point group, to actually spend some time sorting through that every day. It's an exciting journey to be on.
Yeah. So, actually, let's dive a little deeper into your practice and what it looks like or has been like for you so far to shift from being in a traditional education setting to now being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because as we know, entrepreneurship is very glamorized, especially online. I still don't think my family knows what I do. I think that they think I'm just playing around every day. So, talk a little bit to me about how that shift's been for you. What's been like the hardest thing to adapt, and what's been the most maybe liberating part of it so far?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. No, I hear you 100%. My dad is one of my favorite people in the world, and he'll probably listen to this podcast. So, hi, Dad. Um, but he calls me. He's he's an engineer, and he calls me. He's like, "So, how's the business going?" And it's always this question. Like, he's so
Like,
supportive, but he's like, "I'm not really sure I fully understand what my daughter's up to."
fair.
And that is one metaphor amongst many of some of the internalized beliefs that I think I have held and that all of us hold around what success is and what is truly meaningful. And I think having a really stable role and a recurring paycheck and a title and all of these accolades that for my family and my culture that I come from, it's like that is a stamp of approval. And in leaving those roles, all of a sudden that's gone. And who am I without those titles? I think that's been a key shift in being an entrepreneur. And yet at the same time, it has been the best learning of my life. And one of my professors at Pepperdine used to say, life gives you the curriculum that you need.
Mm,
And I think if I'm building a business and I'm serving people, or the services I'm providing to people are about acknowledging yourself and really standing grounded in who you are.
mm,
I have to go through this process. So it's like kind of walking the walk and talking the talk, so to speak. And so it's been a really critical lesson and also a massive shift. But I'll say that there's immense stress with that of like, oh man, figuring out who you are outside of your work is really hard and has its good days and bad days. But there's also immense freedom and joy in experimenting with a different way of being. And I think my joy and my stress are equally balanced. And I'll take that over roles I've had in the past where there's really little joy and there's a heck of a lot of stress. So I'm on the roller coaster, Shay, but I'm learning to love it.
I everything you said 100%. And I think for me, one thing was that I struggle with, but I'm learning to appreciate the curriculum that's being thrown at me is this
Mhm.
whole brand identity.
Oof.
Like, I think people like us, we're passionate about the work, we just wanna do the work. But what it takes now to be recognized to even get to get clients and get the work, you have to do a lot of the things in the background to, get visibility for even what you do. I think taking the positive from it, I think it's shifted my perspective to realizing that in order to run the type of business I wanna run, there was a lot I had to do to be the woman I needed to be to run that business.
Correct.
And that's been very interesting to navigate.
Great learning. It's the learning of a lifetime.
Right, right. So, I mean, now that you've just gone and made the leap, what feels most aligned for you now that you're in the midst of it?
Yeah. It is such a blessing to wake up every day and do the work you feel like you were built to do. And that's not to say there's not a lot of, okay, emails and we're going to write and we're going to post on LinkedIn, we're going to do outreach and follow up emails. But everything I'm doing is it's in service to what I really believe in and what I really value.
Mm,
And I think I underestimated how powerful that is in terms of fulfillment
mm,
and feeling like you're living out your purpose.
mm,
And on the back end, I like previously in previous roles, I just thought that this was not the reality of work, which has like run me down into a whole rabbit hole of study around the psychology of work in this country.
mm,
But I think we truly believe that there is an element of we just have to do the work. We have to suck it up. We have to do what is required of us. And I'm enough of a realist and raised by blue collar hardworking folks that I'm like, yes, that is a truth in this world. And I think I've learned that there is a way to work hard and do the work you're meant to do. And this opportunity has just really showcased that for me,
mm.
which is exciting. So for
Yeah,
those who are thinking about taking the leap,
yeah.
it's scary and it's really hard, but there is a level of purpose and an empowerment that comes with it that I definitely underestimated in terms of its value.
Mm, mhm. God, it's so funny how timely certain conversations are that you even bring this up because I literally was just having my own internal breakdown yesterday because I feel like you might go through this now or you're going to, trust me, this ebbs and flows of just like, what am I doing? Like, I really stopped getting a paycheck for this. There's so much up and down. And then I was thinking back to some of my old positions that arguably were good jobs, decent pay, whatever. I didn't mind the work. And then I'm like, am I just lazy? Am I not passionate about anything? Why can't I stick through what most people would consider a good job because it's not fulfilling me? So I start feeling like, okay, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I have a issue with not having ownership or agency in my position. So I'm like, okay, am I not a team player? You just go through this cycle and it's a lot. Everything you just said just it hit me, like, hard recently. It's really weird you brought that up.
I mean, sorry, my inner coach here's gonna come out for a hot.
No, please, please,
I'm
please.
so curious, like, where does that come from?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you were saying about just my I guess, what I think work is supposed to look like or what it's supposed to be and what success looks like, and, it's funny, it felt kind of weird to go get a PhD, go get a high-paying job that's great, and then quit that a couple years later to just go take a brave move and start my own it just didn't logically make sense. It's kinda just like, why are you taking 5 steps backwards when you're going the way you think you're supposed to be going? So, yeah, just navigating all that and just trying to figure all that out, has been very interesting, and like you said too, I think we talked about, like, traveling and stuff in our one of our first conversations.
Right, right.
And my perception of what work looks like, especially in other countries, kind of shifted the way I feel like in the US, where our identity, so much of that is just tied to what we do that it's hard to escape that part of yourself. And so if you're not doing something quote unquote meaningful or like you said, your purpose, then what am I doing? You understand people have to do all types of jobs, but I'm not supposed to be that person. I'm supposed to be the
Right, right. Oh, I understand. 100%. One question, I was actually just, like, looking at my bulletin board, which is right behind me,
yeah,
and I had to write a question, and I'll pass it to you and, pass it to folks who are listening.
please.
I think when we make changes, we revert to comfort, and it's such a normal, like, no judgment around that. It is hardwired in our DNA to be safe and have our needs met. So, of course, when we're in turbulence or in the unknown, we're just reaching for that anchor, so to speak.
Mhm.
And the question I wrote down for myself that I look at every day as I ride the waves is, what have you gained?
Mhm.
Because our experience is to focus so much on what we lost. Like, oh, I lost that high paying job. I lost that paycheck. I lost the certainty. I lost, there's a level of stress now that I didn't have before. Like I lost some of my peace of mind. And we tend to
Mhm.
focus on the loss, but what's been gained.
Absolutely. I'm gonna think about that. Thank you, thank you. So, when you first started talking about your experience shifting into entrepreneurship, you kinda mentioned, you have a lot of ideas, the coaching, I think you mentioned a book to me during our first conversation. Like you said, even when on the day to day, you have so much to do from social media posts to your pretty much HR, your marketing, you're doing everything, right? How do you find how are you deciding what not to do
No,
every day?
what an opportune question, Shay, 'cause I feel like that is my daily struggle. And I really think the only thing that keeps me from pursuing the, 80,000 opportunities out there, as you know, from a business owner, you have so many things you can do and pursue and build, and it's overwhelming.
Mhm,
The only thing that keeps me grounded is understanding or just getting really, really clear and reminding myself of what matters most to me
mm,
in this work. Like what were the fundamental changes in my life that I want to create for other people because that was the purpose of this business.
mhm,
And sometimes those aren't easy. They're not popular. My whole business is really, really centered in self-awareness, self-awareness, self-regulation, relational leadership. And when I looked at the whole spectrum of organizational development and all of my background in education in so many different roles, this is the least technical of my skills. It's not strategic planning. It's not a 5-point plan. It's not presenting on frameworks. It is creating a business where I challenge people to sit with discomfort and to believe and pay me to
mhm.
go through a really complex process. But coming back to that again and again, and really like sitting with why I started, what matters to me, what experiences do I have that I want to provide to others. It's what keeps me from taking jobs with clients where I'm doing more high technical education work, even though I'm good at that and I really like it.
Mhm.
It's not what I set out to do. So I try to recenter myself on that on a daily, weekly basis. I've
Yeah.
got posters in my office of like, this is the work I do.
Mm,
I've got, images and quotes on my whiteboard that's right behind my desk that remind me of these experiences.
mhm.
And yeah, it's hard to say no,
Yeah.
but it makes my yes so much more powerful.
And so you kinda just answered this, but I want you to try to sum it up as best you can. So, what do you want people to associate with your name when they hear it?
I would say I would want them to know with my business and my name that the work of investing in themselves is the most powerful work that they can do,
Mhm, mhm.
and that it's just that simple.
It really is. Whole point of life to me is evolution, and self-evolution is at the core of that. We're all just living our own experience, so, yes, I agree.
Yeah,
That's nice. Okay, so again, everything that you do is definitely centered around self-management in some capacity.
right.
So, what do you see happen, or how does a lack of self-awareness show up in leadership decisions?
Oof. Yeah. Well, oh, I've seen the full spectrum of leaders,
Hmm,
folks that are really strong, folks that are somewhere in the middle, and folks that are really, really struggling. But the way that a lack of self awareness shows up, to me, it's been really obvious in rooms. When I see leaders whose practices and interactions are isolating rather than invitational.
mhm,
And what I mean by that is the normal basic things that you watch in human dynamics are really the evidence for me of the level of awareness I see in a leader. So for leaders who are not as self-aware, I notice an increased volume in the amount that they speak as opposed to their teams. I notice their need to drive conclusions. I notice I notice their desire to have the outcome aligned to their own needs. And on the inverse of what I notice in the leader, what I notice in the team is silence from a lot of people who don't feel comfortable speaking. I notice only half formed ideas coming from the team because they're trying to judge if the leader values the idea within the first two sentences they say. I notice a lot of self interruption where people begin to speak and then stop. And when it comes to decision making in general, the leader tends to make decisions in a little bit of a vacuum, either just with themselves or the one or two people that the leader has determined hold value on the team. And the impact is a team that functions. I've seen teams like this function this way for years, even decades. But the outcome when it comes to decision making is we have the same type of direction, same type of strategies, same types of decisions being made over and over and over again, regardless of efficacy, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm, absolutely. And you're at an interesting cross section because I'm similar where I do some work like with companies, corporations, but a lot of work I also do, and I think is a little more close to my heart, is the education and nonprofit.
Mhm.
So I'm curious what overlaps do you see between these types of industries, and sectors and just polar differences in navigating them.
Oh, yeah, there are some big differences. Well, yeah, let me start with what's different, and then I'll kinda
Mm,
dive in on what's the same. So, in terms of differences, the stakes are so much different in these industries, in my experience. So, nonprofit is very oriented to a specific mission. Most of my nonprofit work has been with community serving or youth serving nonprofits. So, they are looking at their community or the group of youth that they're working with, and that is the outcome. And those are outcomes that are quite delayed in terms of measuring success, right? The impact that you have on a community takes several years to see. The impact you have on young people sometimes takes their whole adolescence to feel the impact in their adulthood. So our sense of urgency and our metrics for success are so different than, for example, working in tech, where the response or the cycle of feedback on what is working is so fast and the adaptation period is so short.
mm,
And we're looking at like the ability of that business to sustain itself monetarily in for profit. So the urgency and the pacing and the kind of the culture and environment within the for profit corporate world is just so different. So those are like the polar opposites that I see. And what I love, and again, why my business is so centered on people, is despite such different sectors, the reality of our humanity is so common.
abs
Whether we move at different speeds or we measure in different ways, the day to day processing of how we engage with our goal, whether it's a long term and we got time, or it is an immediate and it's a now, our internal processing, we tend towards some of those same challenges of staying in our own internal dialogue, being or dimming or not being able to hear different perspectives, not being able to step out and look and notice what is happening. And I notice that leaders in both spaces oftentimes, like I just mentioned before, charge ahead thinking that this outcome that I'm going to meet, whether I'm sprinting toward it like we do in corporate, or I'm running a marathon toward it like we do a nonprofit, that regardless of that goal, we have a very set way of thinking about
Mm,
what the work looks like. And I
mhm,
think until leaders take some time to understand where that construction of success came from internally, they're really going to struggle to bring people with them as opposed to, I think about sled dogs pulling a sled. I think that's sometimes how we operate as leaders. Like, I'm going to charge ahead as opposed to bringing people with us.
mhm.
So those are some of the differences I know, but also those similarities of how we interact with ourselves and with others. Like, humans are humans regardless of sector and space.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so thinking a little deeper again about the education and nonprofit side of it and, how like, reimagining leadership in those sectors.
Mhm.
If you could This is gonna be a big question. If
Okay,
you
ready.
could if you if you could redesign leadership development and education from scratch,
Mm,
where would you start?
yep. Well, interesting you say that because I'm currently doing a research study on how school leaders are prepared and what leadership development looks like for them across the state of California. So if I've got any principals on this podcast, please reach out because I would love to talk to you. Um, because in the research that I've done, I did a pretty comprehensive study of the literature, and I've started my interviews with both prep programs, universities, and principals in their seats every day. The number one thing I'm noticing is that we are hyper focused on our students, and we should be.
Mhm,
And yet, the focus on the sustainability, well being, and investment in the adults that serve the children is really, really lacking.
mhm,
Just last night, I was doing a presentation for a client and I Googled images of teacher. I just put it in because I wanted a stock image.
mhm,
And the two images that came up first were a teacher with their head in their hands, looking stressed and anxious. And we have normalized that. There is an element of psychology in education where we expect this job to break us,
mm,
to be really, really hard. And we've got a little bit of like martyr syndrome. Like, only if I am giving all of myself and I'm unhealthy and I come to work sick and I show up, show up, show up for my kids, only then am I a good teacher.
mhm,
And that comes from principals, assistant principals, instructional coaches, leaders at the district level who do the same. And again, it's not, I have no judgment because I was that leader.
yeah,
And I was that leader because that was how I was taught to lead. So if I was to redesign the system, I think this work around one, understanding who you are as an individual and how you operate for leaders in the space is absolutely key. But then two, looking at how you share that with the people that you manage and lead. How are you holding honest space for them? We hold so much space, which is PD, we have slides, we have stuff to get through, we're looking at data. How do you actually hold space for them to be human beings and to focus on the skills they really need, which are connection with families and children, connection with themselves and with each other? How are we facilitating that type of adaptive learning
mm.
in our spaces? I think that's where I would start. And, stay tuned, listeners, because I'm hoping that I'm going to be launching a cohort for school leaders that focuses on just that.
Amazing.
We'll see what everyone tells me in this research study, so it can really be in tune with what folks need. But I think that
Mm,
I think that's the missing piece.
love that. Okay, so we always have to end with the signature resolution question because this is the resolution room. So, what is one pattern, personally or systemically, that you've had to pause, examine, and intentionally change to become the leader you are today?
I think
I love when people take the big pause between the questions.
that's when you ask a great question. I'm like, I gotta really chew on that to give you the right answer. For me, I think it was looking at success as a a metric or the meeting of a goal, I think as a school leader and as a nonprofit executive, I wanted to meet goals. I wanted to do what the strategic plan said. And I was blind to everything else in a lot of respects. And I had best intentions and I loved my people. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I must be successful in doing good things for children. And I remember I was studying with my mentor, who was someone from the OD field who was working in ed. God bless her. I owe her my life in so many respects. And I was angry because she was making me do some self awareness work. And I'm like, this woman is a loon. And I just said, look, I get that this is helpful, but I really just need to do my job. Like, I need to do my work. If I just work harder, I will figure this out and I will meet the goal. And she looked at me and said, how's that going for you, Brittany? I just remember we were in an empty classroom in Richmond, California, and I just looked at her and I was like I think my mouth dropped open, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's not working. I'm not meeting all of the goals. I'm stressed. I'm angry. My team is frustrated with me." And that was like the pivotal moment in my career and my life where I realized I had to stop thinking that success was only defined by an outcome and start looking at success as the daily learning we have in this life as people, as professionals. And it wasn't just like it changed in 1 second. It took, 5 years. I'm still learning it, Nishay, today. But I think
Uh-uh.
that was the practice of letting go of what must be and opening myself up more to what is in this moment and what I'm taking away.
Amazing. Uh, can you let everyone know A, what's next for you, and B, where to follow you in your work?
Absolutely. Yes. So what's next for me? I am working on I obviously have coaching and consulting clients at the moment, but I'm trying to work on some direct service programming for leaders in the education and nonprofit space, which really focuses on this deeper work of self-awareness and self-regulation, and then using that to build relational awareness and transitioning into some of those technical pieces around, organizational systems and all the goodies I got from MSOD. So that is work I'm trying to launch in August to follow the school year, because most of my organizations do that work in that cycle. And in terms of following me, I am on LinkedIn. You can find us on if you search the Balance Point group. Balance Point is all one word. And I also recently started a Substack called Mental Gymnastics. I am a fun fact. I'm a adult gymnast. I was a gymnast all of my childhood. Still flip around and love it.
Oh,
We've got a little gymnastics metaphor with all of the internal deep mental work that we're doing. So would love to have you join us on Substack as well to get some great content and dig a little deeper into what it looks like to understand yourself as a way of impacting your teams and organizations.
amazing. Thank you so much for stopping in today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for the invite, Nishay.
If this conversation gave you something to reflect on, consider taking a moment to rate and subscribe. It helps more people find their way into these conversations. And if you'd like to bring a conversation like this into your organization or community, you can submit a speaking request. And if you prefer to start on your own, visit the Resolution Library for a collection of digital resources designed to help you put this into practice one step at a time. Access to our community, speaking requests, and online resources can be found at our website linked in the show notes. Until next time, keep building in the quiet because that's what will carry you forward.